Hello and welcome, I'm your host Elizibar. We're going to talk about something that kind of just popped into my mind as I was reading these old Valiant books. I was going to do a review of Mercy today because I just read it, and then I was like, well, oh boy, Simpson games. Whew, those are rough. And I was just reading some of these Valiant books here because I was like, oh, I bought these, I should actually read them. I read Secret Weapons number 9. Pretty competently executed story. It's just an action story. There's some cool stuff. The cover is representative of what's inside. They're definitely fighting like masked dudes, having a good time. They're on the run. I don't really know why they're on the run, but they are. And it's cool and fun. And I got to the back here. Let me just... Like I told you, man, it's a competently executed action story. There's cool stuff in here. I got to the back, and I saw like, ooh, that is a cool little ad here. And I was like, oh, okay, we got some guy talking, and then gold logo rules. That caught my eye because it's big and gold. Of course it's going to catch my eye. So you want to earn a gold logo. You think it's too difficult. That you have to spend loads of money to get one? Wrong. Anyone can earn a gold logo by simply promoting Valiant comics. If you think up and execute a creative idea and show us that you've let the world know that you're a Valiant fan, we'll send you a gold logo book. Cool! And that got me thinking, what kind of creative ideas have you heard, have you seen for comic book promotion? I'll give you just a second to think about that, okay? So, 1 second now. Okay, there you go, you've had your second. Now, have you thought about it? Did all the things you came up with, let me unplug my headset here, did all the things you came up with, like, just go back to sitting around the comic book store itself? As opposed to things that will catch new customers' eyes? Because if you're just thinking, well, what about Free Comic Book Day? Well, Free Comic Book Day takes place at the comic book store. Alright, well, what about, like, catalog-y things? Well, guess where you get these things? At the comic book store. Alright, well, what about the comic shop news? At the comic book store. What about the little promo materials like they did for, you know, I'm looking to see if I have any mainstream comic stuff laying around. I don't. I've got like this little card here. Like, what about this stuff? This came in the mail, so it's a bad example. This one also came in the mail, so it's also a bad example. It's from Narwhal's Earthbound campaign, I think. But like that kind of stuff, you typically get that for Marvel and DC at the store. Huh. That's weird, isn't it? Now here, this is all about, like, do something crazy. Come up with some crazy idea and get a book for your crazy idea. Like, if you go and... I don't know what they consider crazy enough, but let's, example. Let's say I have some sidewalk chart, and I love doing sidewalk chart art. And I go outside of my sidewalk, and I slap down, like, the Secret Weapons logo or something. That'd be kind of cool, right? That'd be promotion. That'd be some crazy promotion, and it might get me a gold foil book. Maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't consider that cool enough. But, like, that's the kind of idea. So their promotional technique, at least one of them, outside of the comic book stores, when you have a comic book in people's hands, is to just put their name out there. Just crowdsource their promo. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's kind of cool. I like the idea. Like, yeah, what if you let people, your customers, help spread the word? That's definitely a way... I believe you find the strongest kind of marketing is in that peer-to-peer, person-to-person type promotion where somebody says, boy, I really like this thing. And to a lot of extent, YouTube channels and things like that have taken over in that kind of role of, hey, word of mouth says this is cool. But if you look at what mainstream comic book publishers are doing, and even a lot of indie publishers, their YouTube presence consists of like an anemic channel where C.B. Cebulski eats food. Or their channel, their stuff gets put onto like Previews World and is talked about in the fakest, most boring possible way. No offense to people that run that channel, I just don't like what they do. I don't like what they do there. I don't think it's particularly entertaining. But otherwise, all the promotional material comes in the comic book store itself. So you're not reaching a new market. And a YouTube channel that does nothing but talk about comic books is also probably not going to reach a new market because you've already self-selected down to the particular subset of users who are already interested in your product by virtue of them having to go to your YouTube channel, having to click, and having to watch your video there. So if they don't already know about it, because discoverability is really bad on YouTube because there's so much material out there, you're probably not reaching a new audience. The only example of this kind of thing of reaching out to a new audience that I've actually witnessed has been, I was watching, it was probably Babylon 5 or something. This was when Absolute Carnage was happening. And Marvel actually put an advertisement for Absolute Carnage on TV. I'm not kidding. I saw it. The person I was watching this show with saw it. That was kind of cool. I'm like, hey, I know what that is. I have issue 1. Now, that might not be the right thing to do for a channel about science fiction. Maybe a superhero story that requires a lot of backstory and knowledge of all the crazy things going on in Venom isn't really the appropriate thing to be promoting there to a new reader, but at least it's an attempt to get out there and do that. And now, I know what you're thinking over there. You're thinking, yeah, Elizibar, what about all those Marvel movies? As has been said so many times before, those movies did not push comic books because the stuff in the movies doesn't look anything like the stuff in the comic books. Let's say you wanted to get into Thor because you saw the third Thor movie and you're like, oh man, Thor Ragnarok was great. Let me go read Thor. What do you see? You see Jane Foster as Thor. You see Thor's unworthy. You see Thor is getting mocked. He's a joke. Okay, I guess in Avengers Endgame he was kind of a joke because, or was it Endgame? Whichever Avengers movie. Yeah, it was Endgame. Because he becomes Fat Thor. Okay, fine, okay. You win that one. You win that one. But let's say you go look at... what's another movie that came out? Spider-Man. Let's say you watch a Spider-Man movie. You're like, all right, let me go get to the Spider-Man comics. And you go to do that, right? What do you see? You see Spider-Man is a loser living on his girlfriend's couch who lost his company. Where's the teenager that's still in high school and saving the world and is growing into himself? Okay, well, let's say you watched another Spider-Man movie a little earlier and you pick it up and you read, and what do you find? Dr. Octopus is in Peter Parker's body. This doesn't relate. So if you watch the movie, you're like, I want more of that. I want more of that thing. And you go to buy a comic book so you can read about those adventures, read more about that thing. You can't find them. You can't find it. I'm picking on Marvel a lot. I could pick on DC too. Let's say you go buy... You watch Man of Steel, and then you go to buy a Superman comic, and you find out it's not as dark and heavy usually. Sometimes it is, depending on the writer. But it's not as dark and heavy as the movie was, usually. The Spider-Man TV show, the animated series, kind of got that right. Spider-Man is about hope. It's about the future. It's about looking forward to brighter days. If you contrast it to the Batman animated series, you'll see that. Batman is rooted in the present. It's always dark because the present is complicated. The present is difficult. You have to struggle through it. But the future gets to be hopeful and idealistic. And Superman embodies that. He's the man of the future. The movie did not really kind of get that across. Superman was kind of brooding. He was a little angsty. He was certainly a lot more violent than his comic book incarnations. So if you go to read that book, you're going to get that kind of contrast, and it's going to make you go, huh, that's not the movie. So I don't know if that means that the editorial team for the comic books needed to make their stuff more like the movies, or if they should have launched like a special movie universe brand or something that tried to match up the content of the movies to comic books so they could sell those comic books to movie viewers and hopefully convert them into lifelong customers. But they should have taken advantage of that, and they didn't. They're not even doing this kind of stuff anymore. Like, let's say you want a crazy variant. What do you have to do? You have to order like 25 of the same comic book to get a ratio variant. Like, what universe is this? What universe is this where to get one book, you have to buy 25 others? Okay, I know I'm kind of... That's kind of far afield because we've been doing that sort of thing forever. Like right here, each one of these Valiant books from this period had a card in it, and then you could trade that card in, a whole set of them, for chromium cards. So we've already been doing the whole, you have to buy like a whole bunch of stuff to get, you know, the one thing you want. But it seems like it's getting worse. And it's lost the fun. Like if you wanted this gold foil here, you have to do something fun for it. If you want to get your gold foil ratio variant, you just have to pay money. There's no fun involved. It's not a promotional technique anymore. It's just greed. We've lost this fun, independent spirit of doing something crazy. Now, maybe there's a lot of that out there and I just don't see it, or I don't consider it the same way. Because, you know, people do get on Twitter and they do promote themselves by interaction, which is fantastic. But how do you get other people to promote you doing that? How do you get out there? How do you get known? How do you drive sales? If you're a big corporate entity and you want to sell more than 10,000 copies of Miss Marvel, how do you do it? You got to do something. You can't just put in the store, there's a new Miss Marvel issue 0 or issue 1 coming out. That's not going to drive enough sales. You can't just send posters to a store and hope they put them up in the window and that kind of stuff. That's not going to drive enough sales. You can't just put little cards in the store and hope that people pick them up and they remember. Like Batman, when they were doing the wedding thing, there was a little invitation card, which would fit in... I should actually check, see if it fits in one of these invitation-sized envelopes, but I bet it does. And you could get that, and it was like a checklist, and here's all the stuff that you want. That ties into this, all like 43 crossover tie-in books. That's way too many. That's way too many. But that's only in the store. Where was like the Batman wedding ad in the New York Times? How many books would you have sold to people who weren't into comic books, but they go, oh wow, Batman is getting married? Here's an example, like when I was a kid and they were doing the death of Superman with Doomsday, you know, Doomsday is coming. When they were doing that stuff, that made it onto the nightly news. I remember that. My parents saw that. It didn't get them to buy the books, but they saw it. It got that out there. And I imagine that that kind of spiked the sales for, you know, that one issue up pretty high, because everybody was like, oh man, it's going to be a collector. Superman is dying. Now, of course, he came back. He got better. But like that kind of stuff, you got to get out there to find the people that you can turn into customers. And if all you're doing is advertising in stores, or you're not taking advantage of your cross promotions like toys, lunch boxes, whatever else, you know, is out there, video games. If you release a Spider-Man video game, there better be a Spider-Man tie-in comic. I think there actually is. It's like a digital only, isn't it? Injustice, the fighting game, it has a comic book. Like, you need to find ways to tap into stuff like that. And they do that some. But I don't know that they do it enough. Another example. There's a comic book called Read Only Memories. I only ever found issue 1. I never found 2, so I never bought 3 or 4, which I did find. And it's an interesting book. It's based on a video game. I used to subscribe to Old School Gaming, or Old School Gamer magazine in the print. I've got a few issues laying around somewhere. It's a really cool magazine. It's full of ads for things like Retrons and all of that kind of stuff. If you have a comic book based on a video game, you should probably advertise in that channel. You should get it in there, especially if it's based on a pixelated video game, which kind of fits the retro mood, which fits the retro theme, even if it's not an actual retro game. Now, I know a lot of customers of that magazine are probably hardcore. They want to, you know, refurbish their arcade machine of Donkey Kong or whatever. But there's also a lot of people like me that are like, yeah, that stuff's really cool, but you also like more modern things. You can snare those people and get them in. Hey, man, check this out. If you go to our website and you use code OldSchoolGamer, you can buy this for $1.99 instead of $3.99. Use something like that, and then boom, you're selling those books to those people, and maybe you hook them and get them in there to buy the rest. But if all you're doing is throwing stuff into stores and not doing something crazy like this that's outside of the store, you're not going to pick up any new customers. If you're wondering what the track that's been looping is, that's a track from my band back in the day. Yeah, I was just reading these Valiant books and I saw that and I was like, oh man, this just needs, it's just making me want to go rant. And so there you go. You got a little bit of a rant. I'm starting to lose my voice, it feels like, so I'm going to shut up. You all take care of yourselves. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I do think I saw on Twitter earlier that Perch was going to have a video on a similar topic. So hopefully I'm not stepping on his toes too much. But there you go. There you go. I'm looking forward to his video when it comes out. He's usually pretty even-handed and always interesting. And he's fun for a mock, like, 5-minute feud on Twitter if you ever want to do that with him. It's always a hoot. Take care of yourselves and bye-bye.